My daughter-in-law told me to pack my bags. She forgot. The deed still had my name on it. That's the kind of sentence that can split a man in half. It was raining that afternoon, the kind of rain that soaks through bone and memory. I stood at the gate of the house I built, $2 million worth of brick, sweat, and dreams, watching the woman who'd just thrown me out of it. Her name's Melissa, my son's wife. Pretty, polished, perfect in the way ambition can polish someone down to glass, shiny, but hollow. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, my suitcase by my side, my hand gripping the old brass key that used to open every door in that place. My home. Now it was just a stranger's trophy. Inside, through the window, I could see my son, Daniel, head down, quiet, like a boy again. She spoke. He nodded. That was the worst part. The silence. When you get old, betrayal stops feeling like an explosion. It feels like erosion. Slow, quiet, unstoppable. I'd built that house myself. Every nail, every line of code in the structure, every square foot had my fingerprints buried in it. Evelyn, my late wife, picked the paint, the curtains, the tile by the fireplace. We'd raised Daniel there. That house was my life. And in one afternoon, Melissa decided it wasn't mine anymore. "You've had your time," she said, standing in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "You should find somewhere smaller. This house doesn't need you." I looked at her for a long time. The storm was pounding against the windows, thunder rolling behind her voice. She thought she was winning. She thought age meant weakness. "All right," I said quietly, "if that's what you want." Then I picked up my suitcase and stepped out into the rain. But what she didn't see, what no one ever sees, is that when I walked away that night, I didn't walk out defeated. I walked out calculating. She took my home, but I was about to make her pay for it. Every single month. Revenge isn't rage, it's patience. It's knowing how long to wait before gravity takes care of pride. I still had the key, and more importantly, I still had the law. People like Melissa forget how houses are built. They see walls and money. I see foundations, and I know how to shake them. So before I tell you how she ended up paying me rent for my own house, let me take you back to the day she told me to leave it. The day she thought she'd erased my name from her world. That was the day she signed the first payment of her life. And she didn't even know it yet. I was 68 when I learned what betrayal really sounds like. It doesn't shout. It whispers. Through closed doors and unsigned papers. For most of my life, I built things. Bridges, homes, dreams. I used to say concrete doesn't lie. It either holds or it breaks. People. They're different. After Evelyn died, the house felt like a mausoleum. So when Daniel told me he was getting married, I thought maybe life was giving me one more reason to stay. I gifted them the house, $2 million worth of wood, stone, and memory, on one condition. We'd live together, take care of each other, like a family. Daniel agreed instantly. Melissa smiled that perfect smile of hers and said, "Of course, Grant, we'd never leave you behind." For a while it was peaceful. She cooked dinners, laughed at my old jokes, even called me Dad. I wanted to believe her. Maybe she really was what Daniel needed. Someone strong where he wasn't. But strength without empathy becomes control. Slowly, things began to change. My mail started going to her hands first. She took over the bills to make things easier. Then, the small changes. My armchair disappeared, replaced by some sleek designer chair that matched the new aesthetic. My framed blueprints vanished from the hallway. Evelyn's portrait, gone. One night, I came home to find contractors tearing down the porch I'd built with my own hands. Melissa stood in the doorway, clipboard in hand. "We're renovating, Frank. This place needs a younger look." Younger look. That's what I'd become. A relic in my own home. Daniel said nothing. He always said nothing. He wasn't cruel, just weak. And weak people don't need to betray you. They just let someone else do it for them. Then came the papers. I found them in Daniel's briefcase, half buried under invoices. Property transfer agreement, Melissa's name listed as the sole owner, my son's signature right beside hers. I waited until dinner. We sat in silence for most of it, until I finally said, "Daniel, when did you sell me out?" He dropped his fork. "Dad, it's not like that. Melissa said." I cut him off. "I don't care what Melissa said. I want to hear what you say." He stared at his plate. "It's just legal stuff, Dad. Nothing's changing." Melissa's smile was thin as glass. "Don't make this harder than it has to be. You've had your time, old man. This is our house now." The way she said it, calm, confident, final, felt colder than any storm. I looked at Daniel one last time. He didn't even look up. When you're young, betrayal feels like a wound. When you're old, it feels like confirmation. You realize you weren't wrong to mistrust. You were just too kind to stop it. 2 days later, I came home to find my suitcase waiting by the door. Melissa stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her voice honeyed and sharp. "You can visit, but don't overstay. We need space." Behind her, Daniel stood like a shadow. I stared at them both, then down at my suitcase. Evelyn had picked that bag for our anniversary trip to Seattle, 30 years ago. Now it was luggage for exile. I didn't say a word, didn't curse, didn't beg, didn't even sigh. I just nodded once, took the handle, and stepped outside. The rain started again, soft at first, then heavier, like the sky was trying to make up for their silence. I walked down the driveway, the gravel crunching under my shoes, the same gravel I'd poured with my hands when I first built the house. At the gate, I turned back once. Through the window, I saw Melissa pour herself a drink. Daniel walked over, said something I couldn't hear. Then she laughed, a small, satisfied sound that carried through the glass and into my chest. People think revenge begins with anger. It doesn't. It begins with quiet. The kind of quiet that lets you hear your own heartbeat and the sound of someone else's downfall already forming. I walked away that night with nothing but my suitcase, my name, and one thought that kept me warm through the rain. She thought I was leaving for good. She didn't realize I was leaving with a plan. Revenge isn't anger, it's arithmetic. Every betrayal, every humiliation becomes a number waiting to be balanced. After Melissa threw me out, I didn't run far. I rented a small apartment just 5 blocks away from the house I'd built. I could still see the rooftop from my window. It looked smaller now, like arrogance shrinking in the distance. Every morning, I drank my coffee facing that house. Same coffee mug, same hands, different world. She thought I'd vanished, but I was watching. A few weeks later, her face started showing up in the local papers. Melissa Thomas, the woman behind Thomas Interiors. She'd opened a design company right there inside my home. The same living room where Evelyn and I used to sit by the fireplace was now a modern showroom. She'd turned the house into her office, her portfolio, her pride. Bought with vision, not inheritance, she told a magazine. I nearly laughed when I read it. The arrogance of calling my house her creation. But arrogance has always been the most predictable building material. Easy to work with, easier to collapse. One afternoon, I drove across town to see an old friend, Samuel Boyd, my attorney for over 30 years. The man who'd helped me draft every contract I ever signed, including the original deed for the house. He raised an eyebrow when he saw me. "Grant Thomas, it's been too long." "Too long," I agreed, taking a seat. He studied my face, then smiled faintly. "I heard about Melissa." "I'm not here to gossip, Sam," I said. "I'm here to build something new." He nodded, folding his hands. "You're not talking about construction, are you?" "No, not this time." I leaned forward. "I don't want to ruin her, Sam. I just want her to know what she built was mine." He looked thoughtful for a moment, then reached into an old filing cabinet and pulled out a thin folder. "You know," he said, flipping through papers, "there was a clause we put in your transfer years ago. A weird one, but you insisted." He slid the page across the desk. If the property is ever used for commercial or profit purposes, the original owner retains the right to reclaim ownership. I smiled. I remember now. Evelyn wanted it there, said no home should ever forget who built it. Samuel chuckled. Well, Grant, your home hasn't forgotten. That night, I started gathering proof. Melissa had done half the work for me already. Her website proudly listed the house as Thomas Interior's flagship location. There were photos of her clients sitting in my old dining room, had shoots filmed in Evelyn's garden, and video tours with captions like, "Where innovation meets heritage." Her social media became my evidence board. Every post was a nail, every interview a hammer. I could have taken her to court right then, sued her, reclaimed the property, made her crawl. But no, that would have been too quick. Revenge is best served slowly, not to burn them, but to let them feel the chill. So I waited. Patience always rewards those who earned it. A few months later, Melissa announced her next big step, expanding Thomas Interiors. She needed capital, so she used the house as collateral for a $750,000 business loan. That was the mistake I'd been waiting for. The moment the bank finalized the mortgage, I moved. Through Samuel's firm, I purchased the loan from the lending bank. A clean, quiet transaction. No headlines, no noise. By the end of the week, I wasn't just her father-in-law, I was her lender. Melissa didn't even know. She kept on smiling for interviews, giving house tours, celebrating her success. Meanwhile, every month, a piece of her fortune flowed neatly into my pocket, under the label, mortgage payment. Samuel called me one evening, half amused, half impressed. "She owns the title," he said, "but you own the leverage." I nodded. She owned the house on paper. I owned her payments in reality. I started keeping records. Every check, every notice, every line item. I wasn't just reclaiming money. I was reclaiming principle. It's a strange feeling, seeing justice move on a schedule. Every month, like clockwork, her arrogance turned into currency. I never missed a walk past the house. The windows were always bright, the driveway full of cars. She was living her illusion, and I let her, because illusions are fragile things. When they shatter, the sound is beautiful. By the end of the year, the first cracks began to show. A missed payment here, a delayed invoice there. The business wasn't going as well as she told her investors. I watched it all from a distance, my life simple, steady. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd turned the home I built into the cage that kept her trapped. Melissa thought she'd taken everything from me. But the truth was simpler. She was just renting it. One payment, one regret, at a time. When you build a trap with patience, the best part isn't when it snaps shut. It's when the prey finally realizes it was never free. It started with a letter, a simple white envelope slipped through Melissa's mail slot one rainy Friday evening. She was probably sipping wine, scrolling through headlines about her expanding design empire when she saw it on the table. Notice of change. Your mortgage lender has been reassigned. She frowned, opened it, and there it was. Bold black ink across the top line. New lender, Grant Thomas. The silence in that house must have been deafening. I imagined her rereading the letter, her wine glass trembling just slightly. For once, the woman who always had a plan had no script to follow. She called Daniel first, of course, then the bank, then her lawyer. By the time she got me on the phone, her voice had cracked from shouting. "You think this is funny, Frank? You can't just buy someone's mortgage," I said quietly. "You'd be surprised what an old man can buy when you hand him motive and time." She screamed something I didn't catch, then hung up. A few hours later, I got another call, this time from Daniel. His voice was softer, unsure. "Dad, what did you do?" "What I had to," I said. Nothing illegal, nothing loud, just balance. He was quiet for a long time before whispering, "She's scared." "She should be," I said. "It's her turn to pay." The next morning, I drove back to the house, My house. The gates opened automatically. I'd made sure of it. Melissa was waiting on the porch, barefoot, wearing a robe, face pale. I hadn't seen her like that before, stripped of confidence, raw and human. She stepped forward, voice shaking between anger and disbelief. "You can't do this, Grant. This is harassment. I'll sue you." I smiled, slow and steady. "Go ahead, but make sure you ask your lawyer who owns your debt before you do." I looked around at the marble columns she'd installed, the chandeliers she'd bragged about. "Nice improvements. You've really increased the property value. Shame about the paperwork, though." She clenched her fists. "What do you want?" I shrugged. "Nothing. Just wanted to see how my investment's doing." Daniel appeared behind her, silent, ashamed. He couldn't even meet my eyes. I walked past them into the living room, the same one she'd turned into her showroom. There were design sketches scattered across the table, and on the wall, framed magazine covers calling her the self-made visionary. Self-made. I let out a quiet laugh. "You really built your empire on my floorboards, didn't you?" She snapped. "You don't own me." I turned to her. "No, Melissa, I don't own you. I just own the ground you stand on." By Monday, the story broke. Some journalist got hold of the mortgage records. Maybe Samuel leaked them. Maybe fate did. The $2 million legal revenge. Woman forced to pay father-in-law for her own mansion. It was everywhere. Morning news, podcasts, business blogs. They called it poetic, brutal, genius. Melissa called it humiliation. Her sponsors dropped her. Her biggest investor pulled out. Clients cancelled contracts overnight. By the end of the month, Thomas Interiors collapsed under the weight of irony. Daniel moved out, quiet and defeated. He left a note that said, "I should have listened. I never gloated, never shouted. I didn't need to. Justice, when it's clean, speaks loud enough." Every 30 days, her name shows up in my ledger. $8,400. Neat signature, shaky handwriting. Rent, interest, regret, all printed on one line. She took my home. I turned it into her bill. And with every payment she sends, the balance gets clearer. Not in dollars, but in dignity. A year passed. The world moved on, but the echoes of what happened never really left. People forgot the headlines. The news cycle buried the $2 million legal revenge under newer scandals, shinier tragedies. But I remembered. Not out of pride, out of principle. Melissa sold her car, shut down what remained of Thomas Interiors, and quietly left the city. No interviews, no goodbyes. Someone told me she'd opened a small furniture shop 2 towns over. Just her, a dusty storefront, and a handful of second-hand pieces she fixed up herself. It made sense. When pride finally burns out, you start to see value in what's left behind. Daniel came to visit one afternoon. It had been months since I'd seen him. Maybe the space did us both good. He looked different too. A little older, a little softer. The kind of change that comes from admitting your part in something you can't undo. We sat on my porch, watching the lake shimmer gold under the late sun. "She's different now," he said quietly. I nodded. "So am I." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. The kind of silence that doesn't hurt, just breathes. After he left, I stayed out there, alone. The air was cool, and the light stretched long across the water. The world had gone still. I reached for the day's mail, another envelope, familiar handwriting. Melissa's. Inside, a check. The same amount as always. The routine never changed. I placed it on the table beside my coffee cup, letting the sunlight hit the ink just right. The reflection danced on the rim of the mug like a quiet reminder. Some debts aren't paid with money. They're paid with understanding. I leaned back, feeling the wood of the porch beneath me, the breeze carrying faint ripples from the lake. She kicked me out of my own home. Now she pays me rent and respect. I smiled, not out of revenge, but release. Because sometimes the best kind of justice is peace. And peace, I've learned, is a luxury no amount of money can buy. only earn.